Imagine this. It's 2019 and you're gearing up to be a professional K-pop idol. After years of training and unsureness, you finally get the news that you'll be debuting in a group under your decently well-known company. To your surprise, your debut song blows up, as do the comebacks you have following it. For the next year and to quarantine, you and your team are amongst the big names in K-pop. But there's one issue. You have yet to be paid a cent. You're enjoying the fame and recognition for your talents, but you're flat broke and still relying on your parents' money. But it's 2020, COVID's in its prime, and that paycheck has to finally hit soon. Your hard work will finally pay off. As the pandemic slows down, you have a comeback that's a bit controversial, but it doesn't take a huge hit to your... Oh. What's that? Okay, yeah, I'll tell them. All right. So, your group was just put on hiatus for almost 2 years. Exciting, right? Flash forward to August of 2023. Your company finally gives you another comeback and it flops. No one's talking about it and streams are low. And the cherry on top, you still haven't been paid. If this sounds familiar to you, you might be a member of the K-pop group Everglow. Everglow, one of the most forgotten K-pop groups of all time. From 2019 to 2020, they were always pulling views in hundreds of millions. You couldn't go 5 steps in the K-pop fandom without hearing praise for Everglow and their talents. They were one of those groups that everyone knew and everyone had a bias in, whether you were consistently caught up with them or not. Their songs would be featured in every single piece of K-pop content just like any other group. In terms of popularity, they were at least top 15 for a long while between 2019 and 2020. Their song La Di Da was even named the best K-pop song of 2020 by Billboard. However, after having their fair share of high highs and even lower lows, Everglow has disappeared from the public eye and newer fans have only heard their name in passing. So what happened? Why did everyone forget about Everglow? To understand the answer to that, we first need to go over the history of their career. Before Everglow's debut, the group's members carried some notoriety from various different areas. Their company, weeekly Entertainment, was a Chinese company with a South Korean headquarters that debuted various K-pop groups, always with at least one Chinese member. In 2008, when she was only 8 years old, future member Asha became a trainee at JYP Entertainment. She was in the public eye from this very young age and not only increased her passion to be an idol. She graduated from Hallyu Arts in 2017, the same year her future member Onda would be sent to compete in the survival show Idol School. Despite being eliminated in episode 4, she collected some fans from the show who were drawn to her vibe and image. Seeing the possibilities of survival show, weeekly Entertainment decided to send 3 of their trainees, Sujan, Yena, and Yuron, to produce for Yate, where they all gained a mass amount of popularity. Sujan and Yuron were eliminated right before the finale, but Yena placed 3rd and made it into the final group as one. Seeing this popularity and potential, weeekly decided that now was the time to collect their remaining Chinese and begin the process to debut them in a group together. After months of preparation, Everglow finally made their debut as a 6-piece group on March 18th of 2019, with members EU, Mia, Suhyun, Onda, Asha, and Yira. It was an incredibly well-received debut by fans and non-fans alike, with the single album being praised as a fantastic 3-track run with a unique sound. Everglow were projected to be one of the biggest groups, which wouldn't fall flat, but their first comeback would hinder their reputation permanently. Everglow released Adios in August of 2019. The comebacks featured a festival trap song with a military-inspired theme incorporated into the music video and choreography. The verses were filled with harsh rapping and the pre-chorus with soft and powerful vocals. But there was one issue with this. Blackpink had released Kill This Love 3 months earlier, a song that also has every characteristic I just mentioned about Adios. Blinks were terribly upset by this, and the plagiarism allegations had already begun the week of release. Now, I've learned my lesson about voicing my opinion on plagiarism controversies, but I'll highlight the objective similarities that were found between Adios and Kill This Love. There were similarities in the choreography, as well as some overlaps between the outfits the two groups wore on stage. Additionally, the military concept had never been done before in K-pop, and as soon as Blackpink did it, so did Everglow. People were furious about this, discussing the importance of artistic integrity and also sending hate towards Everglow's members for something that was objectively not their fault. weeekly was able to dodge this controversy without releasing a statement, and Everglow carried on with their careers as if nothing had happened. That was until March of 2020 during preparations for a USA tour. At this point, it was the very beginning of COVID, and the emphasis on self-quarantine was growing as the death toll increased. The controversy was around a staff member on Everglow's tour that tested positive for COVID and refused to quarantine. When it was revealed, neither weeekly employees nor Everglow's members quarantined for even a day, let alone the recommendation of 2 weeks. Fortunately, none of the members tested positive for COVID, but the staff member that did was found to have also attended a recording of the show. Because of this, Everglow was seen as the central reason that all these people could have had COVID, which was a serious concern at the time, especially in South Korea. With both of these huge controversies within just a few months of one another, you'd think Everglow would be off the hook for the time being. Surely they'd run out of bad luck and the controversies would stop. In Korea, that was true, but as I mentioned before, their company was based in China. They had run out of luck there as well. In May of 2020, weeekly was personally punished by the Chinese government for something that occurred in June of 2019. Everglow had performed on KFN's Constellation Train, a music broadcast program for South Korean military personnel. Because weeekly was a Chinese company and member Yeon was of Chinese descent, the Ministry of Culture thought that these actions were a violation of the clause that weeekly, quote-unquote, should not harm the honor of the state or individual in any performance or exhibition. The company responded with a statement declaring their guilt over, quote-unquote, damaging the country's honor and described their deep regrets of this action. Although Korean fans did not see any issues with this temporarily damaged their reputation in China severely. In addition, there have been so many random hiatuses over the course of Everglow's career. At one point, itzy went on hiatus out of nowhere for quote-unquote personal reasons and came back with a nose job? This situation raised eyebrows at the company for scaring fans with a hiatus announcement, only for it to be related to plastic surgery that itzy likely didn't even want. It's about time we get into Everglow's signature in-group controversy, one that was the subject of conversation surrounding them for a majority of their early career. This controversy revolves around one word: favoritism. Ugh, that sends a chill down my spine. For almost 2 years after their debut, you could not go 10 minutes without hearing something about weeekly's favoritism issue within Everglow. The origin of this scandal was around Mia and Onda, but later in their career, issues with member itzy arose as well. I think the best way to explain this controversy is just by showing this image. Yeah, it was bad. This wasn't the only instance, however. There were almost countless pieces of evidence that Mia was the favorite and Onda and itzy were the least favorites of the company. There were even suspicions of the company pretending that some members had more lines than they did, for example in Dun Dun. The company advertised as if the line distribution was more fair, but still unfair, when in reality it looked like this. Mia's disproportionate amount of lines compared to the other members was shocking to both Forevers and those who had nothing to do with Everglow. It became a real hot topic every time Everglow had a comeback, with weeekly only adding fuel to the fire. However, fans started looking for ways to attempt to rationalize this unfair treatment. It was then that people also began to notice that there were instances where choreography looked as if it was made for 7 members. It looked like they were leaving space for somebody, and it didn't feel like a coincidence. After all, weeekly Entertainment also had an IZ*ONE member coming back to their company soon. Chariada was the missing piece of the puzzle, and Forevers became obsessed with that idea. The reason Mia's lines were so high is surely because most of them were Fergana. Of course, it would make sense. When IZ*ONE's disbandment was officially announced, Everglow fans lay in wait for an announcement of a new member joining Everglow. And that announcement just never came. When her solo debut finally came around, Forevers felt heartbroken that weeekly really had no reason to be treating our idols like this. It was really just a matter of favoritism. The last thing I'd like to mention in this section is not exactly a controversy, just something strange. Everyone was originally supposed to have a content that centered around never having a permanent leader and every member getting the chance to be a leader at some point. This was quite interesting in the beginning, and even more interesting when the first leadership change occurred in 2021. Shihyun became the leader, succeeding itzy, and now Shihyun has been the leader ever since. This was a little over 2 years after their debut, and now 4 years later, we should have seen another 2 changes. But how many have we seen? Absolutely 0. Forevers have expressed their confusion with Riehua for this, asking what happened to this core concept. They haven't gotten an answer. Now, you'll notice that all of these controversies so far were either the fault of the staff dedicated to Everglow or the company they are under. People were beginning to realize this and take the pressure off the numbers themselves. Everglow were able to enjoy a short period with no stress or hate and release some of their best charting songs between mid-2020 and early 2021. Unfortunately, that didn't last on too long. The era of member-specific controversies begins here, and this is really where it gets interesting. In February of 2021, Asha became one of many subjects of the 2021 school violence expose. Her case was a particularly harsh one, and one with a lot of confusion surrounding it. For those unaware, around this time, a series of articles were released by Naver users surrounding suspected school bullying in the K-pop industry. School bullying is an extremely serious topic in South Korea, as it disproportionately leads to suicide in the country. Asha was one of the many idols accused, but as I mentioned, her section was a bit weird. There were holes in the story, and nothing really lined up. Weever ended up releasing a statement almost instantly, saying that Asha never knew the author and stating their belief that it was a fabricated story. There was silence on this case for nearly 10 months following this statement, and many netizens, especially Korean netizens, believed Asha was a bully beyond a shadow of a doubt. Lots of negativity was sent her way in this time. But luckily, on December 7th of 2021, the user who wrote the article was found and revealed. Weeekly immediately gave it up to sue. However, upon discovering that they were going to be taken to court over this, the user admitted that it was completely fake and deleted the article from the website. They offered Asha an apology, and all negative statements toward her were either disregarded or taken back. Well, that one had a nice positive ending, but this one surely will also have a happy end, right? Not quite. This is the part where, if you're unaware of the Yeeran scandal, or scandals, I'll advise you to buckle up and make sure you have space for your jaw to drop a few different times. Wan Yeeran, Everglow's youngest member, is also their only foreign member, and she hails from China. She's been embroiled in controversy for more than 4.5 years after the video's release. She really cannot catch a break. Because I am not Chinese or Korean, I'm going to deliver this section in a fact-driven way rather than suggesting I favor one way or another. You can feel free to form your own opinion about this over 4-year-long situation. It started in November of 2020 during their promotions for their 4th single album titled, bear with me here, -77.82 by -78.29. Anyways, during these promotions, Yeeran made headlines after something she said on a fan hall with a Chinese fan. This clip got people very enraged for a few very different reasons. I love my country more than anything, Yeeran told the fan. I want to talk to you in Chinese, but because I'm promoting in Korea, there are restrictions. The company told me to be cautious about speaking in Chinese. She expected us to stay between her and the fan for obvious reasons. Many fans of Everglow were angered by this, particularly at Weeekly for not allowing their group member to speak her native language. However, a handful of people were upset at Yeeran for saying she loves her country more than anything. What she said undoubtedly has nationalist undertones, some pointed out, which is dangerous in any context. That was the first chunk of fuel in the fire, and it set the tone for her future controversies. In March of 2021, it was revealed that the company Xinjiang Cotton was suspected to use workers who do not consent to working, to put it in a way where YouTube doesn't get mad at me. These workers were also rumored specifically to be Uyghur Muslims, therefore making the issue not just one of non-consensual labor, but also one of racism. How does this relate to Yeeran, you may ask? Well, during this controversy, Yeeran had shared a campaign post from Xinjiang Cotton with the hashtag I support Xinjiang Cotton. She was the only Chinese K-pop idol to share this post, and obviously people were mad. Why would she support a company accused of such a horrible thing? Many remembered her comments from November of the past year that were perceived as nationalist and attributed her favor for Xinjiang Cotton to that. Yeeran was safe for a little less than a year. Everglow had made a pretty successful comeback that May with Last Melody, and again that December with Return of the Girl. All was well until the incident that occurred in January of 2022. As Everglow were promoting their aforementioned mini-album, the new year was approaching. Everglow decided to hold their first fan meeting of 2022 in Seoul. It was a nice event and all was going very well. Turnout was great and the members were happy and thankful. The girls decided to respectfully greet their fans in the Korean traditional way. The members of Everglow bowed on their hands and knees to fans in the kunjol style, but one member remained standing. Of course, that member was Yeon. She had clasped her hands and was waving them in the traditional Chinese style instead. There was a realistic reason behind this, however. In Chinese culture, it is seen as wrong to bow similar to the kunjol to most people, with few exceptions such as grandparents or deceased relatives. Chinese netizens praised her for this act, noticing that she is one of the only Chinese K-pop idols who protects her country's traditions and culture. Korean netizens, however, accused Chinese netizens of making up this tradition and saying they have seen plenty of Chinese idols during kunjol. This controversy was Everglow's most tumultuous moment. So tumultuous, in fact, that this is when their company announced that Yeon would be going on hiatus, and with that, Everglow as a group was also on hiatus. During Yeon's hiatus to go back to China and spend more time with her family, it was revealed that she was planning for a Chinese solo debut. Many fans and non-fans alike were perplexed. Weeekly had basically caught themselves in a lie. She ended up debuting solo in China on August 31st of 2022 with Call Call, a single which was well received by Chinese fans but largely unpromoted and ignored outside of the country. Everything started to click. Theories began that Weeekly would boot Yeon from Everglow to maintain their popularity in Korea and continue managing Yeon's solo career in China to maximize the money they were making. Over the span of 2022, Everglow performed at a few music festivals here and there as a 5-member group. At K-Pop Concert 2022, they were down to 4 members after Arsha's short hiatus. But then something unexpected happened. Yeon returned to Korea in November of the same year, and Everglow began their plans for a full group comeback, or so their fans thought. Everglow would continue their hiatus for nearly 2 years following the bowing incident, and would eventually, finally come back with All My Girls in August of 2023. The title track, Slay, was a catchy song with a unique genre, but unfortunately did not reflect their previous popularity in the slightest. It generated barely any conversation and got much less attention than was expected from them and their company. They gave it another try in June of 2024 with Zombie, a single album with another great selection of tracks. The concept was also very distinctive, following a theme that was just as horror-adjacent as it was slightly depressing. They promoted this comeback as normal, but their fans felt a bittersweet vibe in the song. This would likely be Everglow's disbandment song. The hiatus had ruined the group's reputation and popularity, and it was irreversible. Since then, Everglow has yet to see a semblance of a comeback announcement. So why, you may be asking, am I making a video about them now? Why are they being talked about when they haven't had a comeback in 10 months? Well, let's talk about something Yeon had claimed recently in a bubble message. Her message has shocked fans enough to post them on social media that the company has yet to issue a statement about it. "I love the stage very much, but in a sense I have zero income," she wrote to her fan base. "But for some reason, I don't want to give up this career. In reality, we haven't settled yet, not once." She also felt guilty and apologized to fans for not having new songs and performances to show everyone. When her fans messaged back expressing their concern, she confirmed her words. "From debut until now, not even once. I'm a worker with zero salary." In a shocking turn of events, Yeon went on to assure everyone that it was okay with her. "At least I can still see forever and have the chance to stand on stage. It's fine," she said. I'm not sure about you guys, but the wording of this is terrifying to me. Why is she okay with not being paid? What is the company doing to make her feel this way about herself? All of these questions were similar to those that fans of Everglow had been constantly asking for the past few weeks since this news came out, and we haven't gotten answers to any of them. So what does the future hold in store for Everglow? Honestly, I'd love to give a concrete answer, but I'm just not sure. There's nothing planned and nothing appears to be happening anytime soon. It looks like this may be the end for them, but let's keep our fingers crossed. Recently, the members have been undergoing weird and sporadic hiatuses and lack of attendance to events, which has led to more discussion about what's going on with them. To the best of my knowledge, Weeekly has, given up on them. Just a couple weeks ago, they did a live in which they offhandedly asked their CEO for a comeback. That live was deleted. It's unfortunate but likely, as they approach their 7th year, things become more and more certain in terms of disbandment. The message with this video is dedicated to everyone, and one I feel is very important. Do not judge a controversy from the first thing you hear about it. Wait for the facts, don't hate immediately, and try to remain objective. The hate that Arsha, Mia, and Yeon as well as really all of Everglow got during their career, has been horrible to witness. It's hard to say it was warranted for any of these controversies. Of course, some of these things were definitely worse than most, but the absolute amounts of hatred directed towards these girls has been absurd. Let's all keep our fingers silently crossed and hope that Everglow can come back from this and be given a second chance in the industry.